We are thrilled and really appreciative for everybody making the time to join us tonight. We understand what a challenging and unprecedented time it is right now, both personally in your lives, but also professionally in each of your individual organizations. So we really just want to say on behalf of Impact 100 that we are with you in solidarity, and just hope that this intense period is behind us very quickly. So with that, wanted to go ahead and get started and just do some general housekeeping as we go ahead into this webinar. First, if we could just make sure that everyone's individual profiles are on mute. You should be able to find that. It looks like everybody pretty much is on mute, so thank you very much. And similarly, if you could turn off your video function as well. It's just easier for us. Right now, we'll be focusing just on the slides in front of you. So thank you very much. The other thing, one of the things each individual organization has been invited to submit questions if you have at any point during the presentation. What we would ask is, if you can see, there's a participants box. If you find Jennie Glover, you can click on her and privately message her any question during this presentation. And Jennie is going to collate those questions, and we'll be able to get to those questions by the end of the session. So please do, if you have any questions, specifically, if you could keep them obviously brief, that would be wonderful. But we're here, of course, to answer any questions at the conclusion of this presentation. So great. Okay, wonderful. So as you'll see on the slide, this is our Impact Grants team, most of whom are on the call tonight and will be introducing themselves at various points when they're taking over specific slides. As I had mentioned, my name is Deirdre Sparopoulos, and I'm the president of Impact. We also have Rowena Crawford Phillips, our grants chair, joining us on the call. Underneath her are Christy Ritz King and Mary Riley, and you'll see everyone else is listed there with contact information and, of course, our webpage. So you'll have a chance to hear from some of those folks tonight. Another thing I just wanted to say is, of course, we had hoped to gather in person, but really want to say thank you so much to our fantastic grant team and our nonprofit grantees who will be joining the call tonight as well, who were able to quickly pivot to be able to deliver this critical and time-sensitive information to you via this webinar. So we really thank you in advance for your patience. This is the first time we're ever doing this. Well, actually, we did it last Thursday, which went very well, but just deal with us, please bear with us as we deal with any technological issues, and hopefully we won't have that happen. So in terms of our mission as an organization, we raise awareness of our community's most pressing needs, and together funding transformational grants to high impact projects addressing those needs. So we have been around since 2015, and very much of a grassroots movement of women coming together to really leverage our individual donations to try to help our community, and that's what we're here to do. I also want to just go on to the next slide, please. This is going to be a brief overview of our grants process in terms of, as you probably know, the way that we get our grant funding is through individual donations through our members, and we pool that money. Once we pool that money and go out to you, our nonprofit community, that kicks off the application process. So this year we decided to create a video that would just explain briefly our process of how it works from there. So we can go ahead and cue the videotape, please.
At Impact 100 Jersey Coast, we pool our individual donations to award six-figure grants to local nonprofits. Every member and every donation has the chance to make a true impact on our community. Here's an inside look at our grant process. Eligible nonprofits submit applications for high-impact projects in one of 5 focus areas: arts and culture, children and families, education, environment, parks and recreation, and health and wellness. Our member-run focus area committees, or FACs, lead our grant review process. Step 1. FAC members are assigned to a committee and receive training. Step 2. FAC members independently review and score applications. Step 3. FAC members discuss and select projects that will receive site visits. Step 4. FAC subteams conduct on-site interviews to better understand each funding proposal. Step 5. FACs reconvene to finalists. At the end of this process, FACs nominate grant finalists for the consideration of our entire membership. The selected nonprofit finalists present their projects to all impact members at our annual meeting. Every member has an equal vote, and grant recipients are announced that night. The process doesn't stop there, because grantees provide periodic progress updates so that all the members can see the results and understand the impact our collective dollars make on the community. Our hands-on approach to giving leverages the dollars, passion, and experience of women in our community. To find out more about how you can get involved, visit our website at www.impact100jerseycoast.org.
Great, thank you so much. I did see someone had messaged that they weren't able to see the actual presentation, the actual video. So never fear, it's actually on our grants page of our website. You can easily click to see that, and it will also be included in our slide deck presentation that's posted on our website. So just want to let you know that is available. And we actually made it on purpose to hope that everybody can, share that with others. It's helpful both for our membership as well as the nonprofit community. So again, please feel free to go back to that and reference it, no problem. So in terms of what we've done thus far in our short history, I did want to let you know that we're thrilled to have been able to make 10 impact grants. We've almost given away approximately almost $1.2 million. And we're very proud to have been able to fund all 5 of the focus areas since our inception. So there's kind of a chart right there that you'll be able to see each of the focus areas and what grants we've awarded to date in those individual categories. Our aspirational goal really is to be able to fund all 5 of our focus areas in 1 year. To do that, we would obviously have to reach 500 members, which is an incredibly ambitious goal. And as you can imagine, given the current circumstances and the very uncertain times surrounding the coronavirus pandemic, 500 members for this year would be quite a feat. So we actually have closed our membership deadline just yesterday. We are still very much tallying up our numbers. We're still collecting our membership donations. And given the circumstances, we're just trying to build in some flexibility. And so we're still accepting memberships. But with that said, we know, our goal is to try to get as many members as possible. I will tell you, we've been working very, very hard to do that so that we can increase our grant funding as much as possible. So we will be able to announce our number on the 2nd of April. So we're very excited to be able to share that with the nonprofit community in the coming days. So please stay tuned. You will be the first to know on how we do this year. And then the final bullet on the slide, important just to emphasize, when we do reach that 500 milestone that we're striving for, one notable change to our process will be in terms of just on the back end. So regarding the application and anything that you'd be doing to apply, that would all stay as usual. But what would look different is when it comes to the finalists. Currently, our process is we have one presenting finalist in each of these 5 categories, so 5 presenters at our annual meeting. Once we do hit that 500 member threshold and be able to award 5 grants, what we would do is increase our presenting finalists. So 2 nonprofits would be presenting in each one of our focus area categories. And so with that, our members would be voting for 1 nonprofit in each of the 5 categories. I hope that makes sense. But so just wanted to kind of share that in terms of that is the one difference when we eventually do reach that 500 member and are able to award 5 grants. That's how it would look. So important to know. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Rowena Crawford Phillips and her team, and just want to say, wish you the best of luck. We look forward to your questions and providing as much information as possible as you roll into this next 2020 grant cycle. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Deirdre, and welcome everybody. As Deirdre said, we are thrilled to have you with us this evening and really understand what a challenge it is for all of you hardworking nonprofits out there right now. We have had some news in from our grantee panel that they are facing challenges. So we will see who can make it tonight. But yeah, it's difficult times. So thank you for being with us. So this slide here is a really reference slide for you, which really tries to give you as much of an overview as possible of our entire grant process and timeline. It's got some key dates on there, and actually at the end of the presentation there's another slide with key dates as well. But yeah, this is the process from an overview perspective for you to refer to. It's divided largely into 3 parts. Our grant application process, which will kick off April 3rd, once the announced, as Deirdre said, on April 2nd. So that's when our grant process is opening on April 3rd. And that goes all the way through to June 1st, when applications are due. Then there's the grant review process, and that's when our committees are meeting to evaluate your applications. And then at the end, we have the all-important grant decision process when our members come together to vote. And this year, the annual meeting where that takes place will be on the 18th of November. So we have, as the video stated, 5 focus areas: arts and culture, children and families, education, environment, parks and recreation, and health and wellness. And we're going to be going into these and which one you should apply into a bit later on in the presentation, but you have to pick one and you have to apply into that one area. And just a thing to note with the definitions, it's important for you to revisit these definitions when you're thinking about what would be the best fit for your project. In particular, please note that arts and culture and environment both have education under their definitions. So if you are an arts organization and it's an educational program, or you're an environment organization and it's educational, we ask that you please submit into arts and culture and environment, not into our general education focus area. So this is pretty self-explanatory, but extremely important that we relay this to you. Confidentiality and conflict of interest are very, very important to our entire organization. You entrust us with valuable information. We keep that confidential throughout our entire grant process, and our leadership and our focus area committee members sign at the beginning of the process. And we also have a conflict of interest policy, making sure that our evaluators, anybody sitting on a focus area committee, that they do not have a conflict. If you are, we welcome leaders and staff and of nonprofit organizations to serve on our committees. But if you are on the board or a staff member at an arts organization or a health organization, and that organization is applying for a grant, we very, very careful that you would obviously not serve on that same health and wellness committee or arts arts committee. So we're very interested to make sure that all of our members are unbiased and objective and fair in their evaluation. So these are the steps in our process from an applicant's perspective. I do apologize if you do hear my dog in the background, by the way. I've done as much as I possibly can to get us as quiet as possible, but I do apologize. And just to say, oh, yeah, there he is. I hope I can persuade him to be quiet. Deirdre, I might have to ask you to take over if he keeps barking, and I'll go and deal with it. But anyway, these are the steps in the application process. We've got eligibility, an important first step, which is going to be the same as last year. So for those of you who are reapplying, our process is very much the same. The eligibility form takes the place of a letter of intent or a letter of inquiry, and it's a pretty straightforward yes or no 10-question form which you submit via our website before you would receive a link to our application. So you have to pass that stage. And it's important, just so you're not wasting your time, we want to make sure that you are eligible before you spend time on the application itself. So once you have that that stage is confirmed and you're approved for eligibility, then you would receive an email with a link to your application. It's online. It's due by June 1st. Then you have the site visit stage if you move through in the process, where members get the deeper understanding of your project, and then we have the finalist presentation at the annual meeting. So eligibility, these are all fairly standard, and we can take questions at the end, just in the interest of time. I'll try to just highlight a few, but this is the organizational eligibility. And you do need to be a 501c3. Very importantly, you need to serve Monmouth County. So we had a question come in with registration you who did submit questions along with your registration for the webinar. Really helpful for us to sort of weave those into our presentation as much as we can to help set you all up for success as much as we can. So that question came in: if a nonprofit's in Monmouth County but delivers services to Ocean County constituents, is the specific program still eligible for funding? So we take a pragmatic view of this. Yes, we currently fund programs that serve Monmouth County. Yes, that is a and it's definitely, though, we take a pragmatic approach. So firstly, you may find that your organization is based in Monmouth County, and people may come to receive your unique service from the areas around, and you're not necessarily in a position to say yes or no, depending on where they're resident, and we totally get that. So if you're based in Monmouth County, there's an assumption that you probably majority serve Monmouth County anyway, but also we wouldn't exclude you from being able to apply, simply because some of the people who come to you for your unique service may come from outside. May have a program with, we're very aware that we have share a border right there with Ocean County. So if you happen to have a few people from Ocean County who benefit, then we obviously wouldn't, that wouldn't exclude you. You'd likely be eligible to apply. And we'd look at it as on a case-by-case basis if there was some questions that, and we can handle those on a case-by-case basis. So the important thing is to show our members that the program is primarily designed to benefit Monmouth County. So you need to have been in operation as a 501c3 for a minimum of 36 months prior to applying. The next point is a financial statements point, which I'll leave our finance team to go over, but you need to possess 2 years of financial statements. And importantly, you need to have a minimum annual operating budget of $100,000, and that's $100,000 in gross revenue and also $100,000 in operating expenses. So it's worth noting actually that some other impact groups actually have a much higher minimum operating budget requirement, such as 3 or sometimes 5 million. We wanted to ensure that our grant process was as accessible to as many nonprofits as possible in Monmouth County, while also providing our members with the reassurance that recipients are able, experienced, and have the infrastructure and resources to manage a grant of that size. So just going on to qualify that eligibility criteria. So we mentioned 2. One was that you had to have the operating budget of 100,000. We had a question come in that said, if your project budget is less than 100,000, what are your options for participation? And so this is an option for you, or it may be, and that would be if you wanted to apply as a collaboration. So with a collaboration, you both have to be 501c3 organizations. And a collaboration is where you're going to come together to implement the project, and you're going to share the impact grant funding. You'll have a lead organization and a non-lead. And the lead organization has to meet all of the eligibility requirements, but the non-lead does not have to have that minimum operating budget of 100,000, and it does not have to have been in existence for 36 months. As a 501c3 for 36 months prior to applying. So we hope that opens the doors for the startup or the younger organizations in Monmouth County to still apply for a grant. Just to add to that, which is important, the collaboration in our application to apply as a collaboration to come within that definition, you do need to be sharing that impact grant funding. So essentially the lead organization would complete the application and then would receive the funding, and then some of that funding would then be given to the non-lead so that they would be running their piece of the project with that funding. That's different from contributing partnerships, which our members really encourage and love to hear about. So please write about those in your application under key resources required for successful implementation, but that wouldn't be the same as a collaboration as per our definition. So these are our project eligibility criteria. Again, serve and benefit Monmouth County. We talked about that. It's important that the project does, by the way, not just the organization as a whole. Be a new program or expansion of an existing program. That's important. We have heard sometimes people are worried that they have to create a brand new program to be eligible to apply for an impact grant. That's definitely not the case. We do look for transformational impact, and our members do look for a clearly defined project with measurable impact, but it can very much be an expansion of something you're already doing. So that's just important to point out, and I can take questions. The project budget does need to be equal or greater than the grant amount, so any submissions for less wouldn't be considered, and that you do need to fully expend it within the 24-month period. So while we do say that that's the case, we do love to hear that we're jump-starting or investing in a program that has strong probability of being funded beyond the grant period. So, please do let us know about that if that's the case, and we just ask that you provide a clear explanation of how the program can be sustained after the grant has been spent. This is what we did not provide grants for. Again, I can take questions at the end. They're all fairly standard and self-explanatory. We do fund general operating expenses and overhead. We just ask that they are reasonable and clearly connected to the program or project. But we do understand that they're obviously an important part of implementing any project. In terms of program expenses, we understand that you need proper staffing, and that's critical to implementing any project. Our primary concern will just be, again, the sustainability after the grant period and how those staff salaries would continue to be funded. And lastly, with the capital improvements point at the bottom, just don't read that wrongly. We actually have a grantee who hopefully will join us at the end of the grantee panel tonight, where we were able to give a grant for capital improvements. So we do fund capital improvements and renovations. We just ask that if you don't own the building, that you have a lease with at least 5 years remaining from the date of the grant agreement. So just to quickly go along, because I'm conscious of time. So the application's online. Thanks to our fiscal partner, Community Foundation of New Jersey, we've been lucky enough to have be a user on Foundant. So we're very, very happy with that platform. And that's why when you go on and create your account or go back to your previous account, if you have your log on, otherwise you can just reset your login details, but you'll see Community Foundation of New Jersey. Don't worry, you're in the right place. That's just because they're our fiscal partner and provide us with this platform. There's an access code, and all of this information, when you get your link, comes in the email once you've been approved for eligibility. So don't worry too much about this. This is just for your reference, so you can see what it looks like. And all the instructions will be in the email. So in the absence of being able to give tailored individual feedback, which we do here and we know is so what we would love to be able to provide and what you all would love us to be able to give, in the absence of being able to do that, simply because we do not have the resources, we do try our best to set you up for success as much as we can. We do provide feedback in various ways throughout the grant process, whether it's sort of general feedback from our committees as part of our notifications, depending on where you get to in the process, whether it's questions that are asked and comments made at site visit, or whether it's at the rehearsal, which Betsy will talk about in a little bit for the presentation at the annual meeting. We do have built-in mechanisms to provide you with feedback along the way. But the other part is to really try to give you now as much clarity and information about what our members are looking for in the applications. So it may sound obvious, but a concise proofread application with all attachments is really, really very, very important, especially if you are reapplying and are for the same project. We really absolutely don't want you to try to reinvent the wheel and come up with a totally new project year in and year out. You absolutely can apply for the same project, but be really super careful that you're revisiting that application, and if you're copying and pasting, that there aren't any irrelevant or old or outdated pieces of information in there. Be very transparent about any contingencies. Unfortunately, if you have anything outstanding to do with permits or approvals, our committees just simply won't be able to move it forward in the process if you still have anything outstanding on September 15th. But be very upfront about that. And if you've already got them, then say that you've already got them. Don't assume that our members will assume that. If they see it's a building project and you haven't mentioned approvals or permits, they will worry that you've not thought about it. So be upfront and say, we've already got them, or they're pending, and we expect to hear by X date. Just be very transparent about that, because that's been an issue that's come up in the past. apply into the focus area that's best fit for your project. And I'll go into that in a bit more detail. Transformational impact. We actually had someone say, what is that anyway? One of the questions. So I'll go into that a little bit more as well. And actually the next 3 points we're going to talk about in more detail. So let me move along to the next slide. So this is actually going to be a new question I'm going to be adding to normally it would just be a tick box, and we're actually going to be adding the question why. And the reason for that is we really want to make sure our members understand your rationale for why you have gone into that category, and there can be no doubt that you should belong in a different one. And so it's to try to take the grey out of it and have everybody be very clear on your reason, because it's your choice, as to why you've submitted into that focus area. And it's important to note that you can't change that between eligibility and your application. Once you've decided that is it, and in your application we'll be asking why. So really you'll need that rationale. Hopefully you already know what that rationale is at eligibility stage, and then you'll be able to explain it to our members in the application. Summarize the potential transformational impact of this grant funding. So that's a key question on the application, which I can't really even sort of emphasize enough how important this is. And to answer the person who said, what does that mean? We've actually had feedback from our grantees that it would be very helpful to know that if you put yourself in the position of presenting the 6 minutes at the annual meeting, and what you would get across and say then, and work back from that, this is what really is being asked of you in this question. And it's challenging, we really do understand that, super challenging, but so impactful on our members when they're looking at your application. So just think about maybe doing that and fast forwarding to that essential, very challenging presentation, and making sure that you're putting those very key points into this question when you're answering it. So we have 3 funding priorities, and we have reworded these to try to minimize duplication. We understand that there is overlap there, but what is the underserved population? Who are they? Why are they underserved? And hopefully that just really focuses our members in on the who and why they're underserved, as opposed to what you're going to be doing for them, because that comes later. So how does the project address an unmet need? So really what our members are looking for here is, how are you best placed to meet the need, and how and what if there are other providers also providing a similar service, how will you either be different from what they're providing, or how you'll complement each other's services. So what's often good here is like to just ask, what would happen if this project weren't to happen at all. And then lastly, how will the project have a high impact on beneficiaries? And just remember, this could be that it's high impact in the sense of lots of beneficiaries and lots of people, or an increase in people, or it could be the impact on each individual and how deep that impact is on each individual. So different ways of looking at impact there. And we do ask that you use outputs and outcomes to explain that impact. To drill into that a little bit more, we try to illustrate this in the next few slides, and you'll see that there is a table that expands with each column, which gives you at the end a sense of what the ideal question or answer would cover and the way it would do so. So just to go back, measurable outputs and outcomes, less effective, we quite often get sort of a very broad stroke, vague explanation. And we really do ask, please try to be as specific as you can. It really helps our members wrap their arms around what that transformational impact is. And so be specific if you can, and then give perspective. So if it's 300 additional clients, what does that mean in the big picture? Is that a large percentage increase, or what is the current versus, what the 300, what does that mean relative to now? And the output is really the so what. So, what is so if we're going to give somebody 300 more ice cream cones, that's 300 more, but what's the effect on the people receiving those? And will they be that much happier, or will it mean that they'll put on weight, or whatever it might be? So it's what's the so what. And again, try to be specific. So if you're looking at reducing waiting time, what time reduction is expected? And then the how will you track? So yes, just think about those tools that you're using to measure that, so that you'll help us really understand the effectiveness of your project and know whether it's successful. And lastly, you've got the sustainability piece. So what we quite often find is sustainability is translated to mean, how will I fund it beyond the grant period, which obviously is incredibly important, and we do want to know that. But if it just means that the answer is we'll fundraise more, then that is something we appreciate as a huge challenge, and we're very interested to know what that will look like for you. But our members are also really interested to understand what success is going to look like beyond the grant period. So if 300 more walkers are provided, for example, the ongoing success might be measured in the number of times they're actually used. So it's just thinking about how to really tell the story and give as much information to the members as possible. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to our finance team, Michelle, and I'll hand it over. Thanks, Michelle.
Sure. Yes, Tricia is unfortunately home with sick children, stomach bug, not the other sick. But anyway, so the required financial documents we ask for in your applications are all documents. We look to see the 2 most recently completed fiscal years and your current budgeted year. So your top five donors would be for each recently completed fiscal year, the past 2, and what you are projecting or has already been committed for your current budgeted, not yet completed fiscal year. Your financial statements, obviously if you've been audited, we want to see the full audited reports. If you are not audited or reviewed, that is fine, but we do ask you submit a complete set of financial statements anyway, and they can be signed by your executive director or finance director, just attesting to the fact that they are, complete and accurate to the best of your knowledge. We look for the current budget, and as well as your year-to-date actual results versus budget for wherever you are in your current fiscal year. We will grab the tax 990s, so you don't have to worry about finding those and uploading those. We do provide a field that's called a financial narrative that is optional. It's not a requirement in the application, but it is a great place for you to explain any positives or negatives that are in your historical information or your current year for that matter. Maybe you had some turnover in your finance department, whatever the case may be. So it's not necessary to use it, but if there's something you would love to explain, it's there for you. Then also we are going to ask you utilize a template that we provide when you give us the budget for your proposed project. We understand and we are very sorry, it's probably more work for you, but it really does help streamline our process and helps the committee members with their review. So again, we want no gaps in the 3 years, so the 2 most recently completed and the current fiscal year. We talked about the attestation, and we are very willing to accept any draft versions until a full audited set of financials is available, depending on the timing of when everything is. And these uploads can be troublesome sometimes. So if there's ever a case where something isn't working in the application, then you definitely have the grant's email address that you can use to email any of these documents. As far as our project budget, it goes without saying that the total should equal or exceed our grant amount. So if we are giving $105,000 this year, we want your budget to be at least $105,000. Make sure you proofread, do any recalculations, just double check the work. Obviously, it should go without saying to do that, but sometimes you'd be surprised. For example, if you're listing, you need 4 Chromebooks in order to take on this project. If they are $200 each, they should be $800, not a line item saying $1,000. So just double check the calculations, ensuring that your project budget is realistic. If a new vehicle is listed, it's probably not only going to cost $100. So things like that, just common sense areas there. If we look, the next page has an example of what our project budget is. So this is what we're calling a quote unquote good example. The top portion of this template is where we would like for you to identify the proposed funding for your project, including our grant amount. The budget for your project, again, should be at least our grant amount, which, as we're still wrapping up this membership fundraising cycle, we're not sure of the number yet, but when you access the template, it will be pre-populated with the exact amount. The rest of the template page is used to identify all the costs of your project by expense category. Similar to what Ro mentioned earlier, the committees who are reviewing these applications, they do change every year, but one constant that we've seen is that all members want to see that the funding provided by Impact 100 for a proposed larger scale project is impactful and transformational. When looking at this budget, some important things are the details to consider when you're creating yours. What we would consider a quote unquote good example are things like noting the details in the line items provided. If a staff member's salary is part of your project's expenses, list the gross salary, including payroll taxes and any fringe, and then note that the amount you've listed does include those items. So we don't have to guess and look at it, because depending on the amounts, they can become quite large. If you have a line item for miscellaneous for a very large amount, don't. Break it out, please, and provide a better detail. It's completely okay to utilize our funding for administrative or overhead expenses, but please explain in the budget how exactly it is allocated to this particular project. And again, the biggest tip, make sure the total expenses that are allocated to Impact agrees to our grant amount and that the column calculates correctly. The next page is an example of a quote unquote bad example, but it's pretty much the opposite of everything from the other. And again, these are all going to be included in this deck that's available on our website. And if you go on the site, you can actually see a preview of the application. And this template is there's a blank template provided as well. After the initial reviews of all applications, those organizations selected to move ahead in the process will be contacted to request a site visit. Betsy McKnight, our nonprofit coordinator, will talk about these site visits.
Hello there, I'm Betsy McKnight, the nonprofit coordinator. Thank you for joining us tonight. So for the site visits, basically they take place in early September. There's approximately 5 finalists who will be selected in each focused area, and all semi-finalists receive a site visit. The committee members Conduct the site visits to hear firsthand about the impact that the grant can have. The objectives are to meet the key staff members in person and to find out more detailed information about the organization and your project. It's also to conduct due diligence and to review, resolve, or to clarify any outstanding questions from the applications. Next slide, please. Some tips for a successful site visit. The purpose of the site visit is to bring your project and your application to life. It's an opportunity to really tell your story and to help the focus area committee members better understand your strengths, the resources, and the plan that you have for how you're going to use the grant funds. And it's really important. You only have it's a limited time, so you want to use the time wisely. You want to focus on the project more than on your overall operation. That is what the committee members are there for and what they're most interested in. If you're going to give a tour of the facilities, keep it brief and keep it relevant. We don't need to see the boiler room, unless that's actually going to be where you're conducting the project. If the project is a renewal to some of your space, then show the space that would be affected, or if it's going to be conducted in a certain area, show us the areas where it's going to take place. The site visits are usually about 2 hours, and they include the executive director, the person who's going to the project manager, at least one board member, a financial representative, and then possibly staff members who are going to be involved in the project. You want to have your best speakers. You want to have the people who can really convey the case the most eloquently. This is you can almost think of this as like a dry run for your presentation. What you would want to say at your 6-minute presentation, those are really the things that you're going to want to highlight in this site visit. It gives you a chance to sort of see the focus area committee representatives' reaction to them. That site visit representative will go back and report their evaluation to the larger committee. And it's one of the large bases upon which they vote for the finalists. And then a finalist is selected. Also to note, all organizations that receive a site visit will be invited to submit a wish list, which is another opportunity to get your things that your organization needs the most to the whole Impact 100 members. Next slide, please. Finally, you'll have the presentation next, which is in advance of the final meeting. A finalist liaison will be appointed. That is somebody who is going to be sort of your face and your connection to the focus area committee. And members will receive a finalist package that contains a 1-page informational sheet on each finalist. You want to make sure you're given a chance to review that, and you want to make sure it's compelling as possible, because there is absentee voting for Impact 100 members. So for a few of them, this might be, the only way that you can sway them towards your project. All the finalists, as I mentioned before, will give a 6-minute presentation. There's no bells and whistles. It is purely a person at a podium speaking. There's no video, audio, video or any other props. You will get a chance to have a rehearsal with the support of the Community Foundation of New Jersey. And this is an amazing opportunity to do a dry run with folks who have been submitted, who have been giving out grants for years. And I think, as you'll hear later from our finalists, from our past grantees, it's invaluable, because you get honest feedback on presentation style, the content, what should stay in, what should go out, what should be emphasized. So you really want to take great advantage of the rehearsals that will be provided. Vote is one member, one vote, and that determines which finalist receives the grant, and the recipients are announced that evening, and it's a very exciting and emotional and wonderful event. Next slide, please. After finalists are selected, grantees are selected, there is some oversight. Basically, we want to be good stewards of the money that we receive. So we ask for interim reports and final reports, and a lot of times, with your permission, we will share some of those details to our larger membership via things like newsletters and also events that people attend, that Impact 100 members attend. The benefits, next slide, please. The benefits of the impact grant process are wonderful for the organizations. Even if you're not selected as a grant recipient, we've heard a lot of feedback from our nonprofits that the process gives an in-depth, unique insight into your organization and your programs to hundreds of philanthropically minded women who are ready to give their time, talent, and treasure back to the nonprofits in Monmouth County. There's a lot of feedback that's built into the process, whether it's along with the notifications and the questions and the comments that you receive at the site visit and during the rehearsal. And a lot of nonprofits have said that the process themselves forced their organizations to become, to really focus on what their missions are and how they want to complete projects. So it can be wonderful organizationally for a nonprofit. Members learn a lot about your needs through the wish lists, and they also end up getting involved in a myriad of ways, whether it be on your board or volunteering. And so the process also helps you hone your goals, your outcomes, and your messaging, and it leaves you in a stronger position to get to other funders, even if you're not selected by Impact this year. And should you reapply? Absolutely, we can't emphasize this enough. Each year, members come to the table with fresh eyes and new perspectives, so there's no need to reinvent the wheel. If you feel your project is best placed to address those needs, but you should reapply because the pool of applicants changes. So who it is you're competing against changes every year. The focus area committee composition changes, so even if the criteria is consistent, the people who are judging you against that criteria are different. The voting impact membership changes, so the people who are voting for your project change every year. It's a new opportunity, and you come back with more experience and understanding of the process when you reapply. And this is why we've had applicants in our grantee pool who've come back and been successful. In fact, 2 of our grantees on our panel tonight were applying for second and third times before they were awarded a grant in 2019. So it absolutely is suggested, more than suggested. The important dates are pretty self-explanatory. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but just want to keep in mind, please don't wait until the 11th hour and put yourself up against the deadlines, because there can always be technical glitches or things that happen. So when at all possible, try to submit a couple of days, at least a couple of hours before the final deadline. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jennie Glover, and she's going to introduce our grant recipient panel. Thanks very much.
Great, thanks. Welcome, everyone. I'm Jennie Glover. I am the Impact Nonprofit Communications Coordinator. I'm so happy for all of you to be with us this evening. As Betsy said, we're now going to be turning to our past grantee Q&A panel. Given the extraordinary circumstances of today's world and the challenges that we recognize everyone is facing, Deacon Rose, unfortunately, will not be able to join us this evening as we had hoped, but we wish St. Mark's Center all of the best wishes. It's incredibly challenging times for us all, and even more so for all of you who are trying to fulfill your missions despite so many roadblocks right now. I know that Cindy with Clean Ocean Action is not able to log on till about 7:30 or so we'll wait for her. And I want to call out and see if Jim Lenscold with Asbury Park Music Foundation happens to be on the line. I didn't see him listed. Jim, are you there?
Yes, I'm on the line.
Oh, terrific, Jim. Great. So happy to have you. Before I hand it over to you, and hate to put you in the hot seat as you're the only one on the line currently, I do want to just encourage everyone to please, if you have any more questions, given any of the past slides that were presented, please feel free to message me. You can do so privately during the course of this Q&A. And we'll try to get those answered for you by the end of everything. I do also want to point out that we were able to have St. Mark's, Deacon Rose with St. Mark's, and also Lauren Walden with Court-Appointed Special Advocates, CASA, two of our 2019 grantee recipients on the line for our last info session, which was recorded. And so I do encourage you to, if you have an opportunity, it will be on our website after this information session. If you just want to sort of jump ahead to about the hour mark and listen to maybe some of their points of reference, it could be incredibly helpful. Both St. Mark's and CASA were first-time applicants in 2019, and clearly had, you know, really great perspectives to share in that they were able to so successfully go through our process on their first round. And they had some really interesting things to say, especially Deacon Rose, given that St. Mark's was simply something of renovation of the building. And then CASA had also a unique perspective in that they were simply enhancing basically their mission and things that they are doing all the time. So the way that they were able to really concisely provide numbers to showcase the transformational impact that adding you know, in additional volunteers and how that would service an additional amount of very specific children was very compelling, despite the fact that it was simply an enhancement of their current mission. Jim, with Asbury Park Music Foundation, 2019 was your second year. You were actually a finalist in 2018.
That's right.
So before we get to sort of any specific questions, if you wouldn't mind providing all of us just sort of a snapshot at really your project and not necessarily just the overview of the project, but what you felt sort of really the transformational impact you hoped would be, and what you feel likely was so compelling to our members.
Right. So with the Asbury Park Music Foundation, our longtime history has been providing youth music programs that are really meant to be life-changing, engaging the kids and building it around music. And what we had noticed was that there's a whole other set of kids that are interested in the music but didn't want to be performers. So we were just at this point where we were starting to see the potential for all the surrounding functions, the audio production, the video technology and production, and the media promotion, to that because there was music, these kids would get engaged in something that might seem too technical for them otherwise. So that idea had been around maybe just a month when Impact 100 came to our attention. And you know, it was the transformational piece for us was we were thinking of all these small little things we could do, and we said, well, wait a second, what if it's a program and it operated, you know, almost like a business simulation? If we did all these things at once, it would elevate so that the kids would find much more passion in it. So that's where we said, okay, $100,000 for us is big. I think, you know, we're getting grants mainly in the $5,000 to $20,000 range, and a lot of it is just to continue programs we were already doing. So it was a great experience for us. I'd even say, you know, when we went through the first time, went through the entire process of the proposal all the way through to presenting, when we didn't win the grant, we still felt like we won so much in terms of the process. And now we had a vision for a big program that we would have never had. You know, one of the things I pointed out when I've presented at other impact sessions is if 100 people had each given us $1,000, we would have found good use for that. But by 100 people coming together and give us 100,000, it was exponential in terms of the impact we could have and our approach to that. So that whole process, the proposal alone got us to break down our thoughts and go through the whole steps of the budgeting and all the things that we probably should do anyway, but we don't always do to the same degree of discipline. When we had the site visit, we had really good questions from, I think it was 10 to 15 women at the meeting. And it not only challenged us, it made us think, get our own clarity around our own vision for this. We got to the presentation part. We had two individuals coaching us, and they were also challenging. It wasn't about how do we win the grants, how do we make sure we have the right vision that will then naturally present itself and win. And then all the way up to the point when we presented, we felt good about it, but we also knew that there was 5 great presentations. So, not everyone can win, and that's just the reality of it. But we were one of the groups, I think, that were really big at reinforcing that. When we came back the next year, we was like, now the focus, the 6 minutes that you present, that's that core message. And we just really, we then worked backwards. We revised the proposal, kept the same topic, same program. But by that time, we had got a chance over the course of the year to do some smaller trial runs. We had a little bit more time to revisit some areas that, so we changed the approach to the education, this whole project-based learning. We just didn't have time to develop that the first time. And then what we started with was, we had some partners in the community, but we recognized that with the additional time, one of our closest partners is the Boys and Girls Club of Monmouth. So we just had all these things that you really need to be thinking about now for the proposals, all the things that that go into a good proposal, they take time. And so having that additional year, not only did we just do a better proposal and win the grant, it was a better program. So that whole process over the course of 2 years has been huge for us. And of course, now we get to implement, so it's even a bigger impact, right? So.
Right, absolutely. And Jim, you're taking my questions from me, because I was going to ask you specifically about coming back as a returning applicant, how you feel that you may have shifted or changed your proposal, but you really spoke to that about sort of really having the time to flesh out some of your partnerships and really kind of hone that message even more.
Right. But I would reinforce some of the things you said that we were saying in the intro leading up to this, is that the key thing is don't be discouraged, and we ended that session very encouraged. So now look, we knew we made it to the finals, but I would even say for the people that didn't make it to the finals, the whole idea of looking at $100,000 grant is to challenge yourself and think transformationally. So going through the process once, why wouldn't you do that again? I think we would have gone a 3rd year easily. Just because it's that size grant doesn't come along often, and you still get value out of the work you put in. It's nothing. I don't think anything's wasted.
Right. Right. Well, speaking of, going a 3rd year, that leads nicely into Clean Ocean Action, who became one of our grantees last year along with you. And 2019 was actually their 3rd year of applying. I want to just call and see, Cindy, do you happen to be on the line by now?
I am.
Oh, great.
Perfect time.
All right. Terrific. So glad to have you. You may have missed, Deacon Rose, unfortunately, with St. Mark's, is not able to join us this evening. So Jim just spoke basically to our 2 preliminary questions, but I'll hand it over to you and just ask if you want to provide a little bit of some framework about the transformational impact that your project had, and what you think was really resonated so much with our members.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad the timing worked, and thank you all for joining the call. I know these are very difficult times, as I'm sure you've said, but we are very excited, especially considering all of the anxiety and the issues that are swirling around that right now, to have the first environmental impact Jersey 100 Jersey Coast grant will enable us to upgrade our new headquarters to become a beacon for action. And this is particularly exciting as we launch the Impact 100s with the Impact 100 support, the Student Environmental Advocates and Leaders, better known as the SEAL program, which aims to empower students to become mindful and resourceful leaders with a focus on current environmental issues. With everything from what's happening now and with climate change and the plastics issue, there's so much that young people are worried about, and this will empower them to target issues within their own communities, to be problem solvers, and rather than feel anxious about these issues, to become leaders in addressing those issues and become ambassadors within their own communities to help solve the problems.
That's awesome. Terrific. Thank you.
Then,
Go ahead. Keep going.
Do you also want me to speak to the process and how?
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to hear from you, very specific to the application itself, simply because that's what, everyone on the call will be, working towards in the next, in the upcoming weeks and months. And, we appreciate and recognize that it can seem like a daunting sort of process to start off. So if there's anything specific just to that, the actual application, any questions that that you found to be maybe more challenging, or how you sort of address those, or why you feel that your project was so successful regarding the application round.
Thanks so much. Well, there are three things. One is, on our initial proposal and in our subsequent proposals, the feedback that was given to us by the committee members was so helpful. It was tough to hear sometimes, but it was really helpful and really helped guide us and address and make sure that we were answering the questions. So I would say, based on that, the second thing would be to, as you're preparing your proposal, when you're making claims, say to yourself, as evidenced by what? How will we prove these things will have, that kind of impact, that transformative impact, so that when, you're having the meeting, you'll be able to provide the specificity on how that works. And the third thing I would recommend is that you ground truth some of those, some of those hopeful, goals that you want to set for yourself. Reach out to some of the people in the community and get some testimonials about how impactful this will be for you to be able to do this important work, so that you can, again, convey that not just in numbers or in statements, but actually with compelling testimony. And because, there's nothing like those true real world stories that help, that are so moving and can help make a difference.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cindy. Jim, I'm going to actually send it back to you for our final question for actually both you and Cindy. And that question is, it'll be interesting to hear your perspective, given that you are a returning applicant, but are there one or two, I guess, sort of key tips, if you will, or, something that looking back, you thought, gosh, I wish I had, or just kind of anything as a general sense to say, it might seem like really minor in the weeds, but if there's something that really stood out to you as a key suggestion, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, there's a lot to the proposal, because you really have to have that, it has to be complete, right? You have to have everything from the vision. You've got to have the compelling, compassionate message and purpose. And then you've got the financials, and you've got the staffing and the logistics side over there too. So I just think, I just say, go in there, get a good team, unless you've got someone who's really good at all those different areas. But for us, it was a lot of different stakeholders in terms of, we each had some different expertise. We also had some partners involved to coordinate. And But I think for us, like if I think about the process and how we went through this whole thing, and then all of a sudden the last week or two gets intense, and you think you're most of the way there, but I would say make sure you do some of your hard parts first. If you're not good on the financials, get that kind of out of the way, or make sure you have the right people. Because what you'd like to do in that last week, so obviously we had a written proposal, it was easier the second time around for us. We were really, focused on, it was almost like a rewrite, but what we found, it was a much easier to kind of clean up, make it concise. As much as you want to put a good message out there and think of every possible thing that you could put in, there's people that have to read this, and they're long. So, as much as you get to the point and make it compelling, that's it. And then that other thing was just keep those 6 minutes in mind. If you have to, I'd almost encourage, give it a try doing 6 minutes. You'd be surprised how fast it goes. And you don't get to that until you're way at the end of the process. And so give that an attempt and see what that looks like. Because again, it wouldn't be wasted time. Even if you don't make it to the finals, it's still a good exercise.
Right, for you internally to kind of hone your mission and messaging.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cindy, what about you? Clean Ocean Action. I mean, was there anything specific to your organization that you can really say to any of our, any of our participants this evening?
Well, I think I would second Jim's emotion on, kind of getting that 6-minute vision kind of in your mind and put down on words, because when you have to collapse it all to 6 minutes, you really identify the passion that will hopefully translate to, the, incredibly empowering room of 400 plus women. I mean, imagine that you're having this moment, 6 minutes to express everything, your hopes, your dreams, how you will do it, how it will be effective. And it really kind of sets up the bones for your application, because you can go back to those core values and help translate those in depth within each of the different sections. But the way in which Impact 100 has set up this program, this process of application, is it really starts with those bones of each of the areas that you have to go in depth on, but structure, but it really does become a good structure for the whole proposal, and I can't stress that enough. And then just the other thing that Jim said that I would sort of add to as well is, bring the best and the brightest into the room, and, really, brainstorm about what would be the transformative piece of the proposal that you're bringing, because they the process is really looking for those projects that will be transformative. And if it's kind of, if it's a program that that you enjoy and that the public enjoys and is educational, that's great. But you're looking, and Jersey Coast is looking for those special projects that could just really transform the programming you do. And I would look to the other grants that they've made over the years. The projects are absolutely, incredible. And, we're just so honored to have been selected, but they really show you and the level that they're looking to fund, and to think bold, but to stay to your roots, and, think transformative thoughts.
Absolutely. That's what we're all about anyways, right? Well, Jim and Cindy, I can't thank you enough. We've said it, not to sound like a broken record, but, we're experiencing some really unbelievably trying times, and even more so for organizations such as yourself that are, already trying to, basically move forward with challenges that are even now supplemented with even more challenging times. So we appreciate you taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedules to speak with all of us this evening. It's been such a pleasure to have you join our Impact family, and it very much is an Impact family. So having you all on board with us has been a treat for all of us. I do want to also just remind all of our other listeners and participants that if you'd like to hear again any perspective from some first-time applicants, both CASA and St. Mark's Center for Community Renewal, you can hear some of their thoughts at about, again, as I mentioned, the hour mark from our last information session, and that recording will be on our Impact website shortly. So you can always log in and listen to that then. I'm going to turn it back over to Ro. There was a question or two that had come in through the course of the presentation, and she is going to address those now. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Jenny, and thanks Cindy and Jim for much for joining us, and good luck with everything. We'll be thinking of you, and let us know if we can support you in any way. So just the question that came in, how specific does the grant usage need to be? If we're looking for money to help with a large motor playground space at a school, do we need the full plan, including all materials, space use, zoning challenges, etc., or would it be more general? So I think that what you've probably heard from tonight will largely answer that, in that wherever you're able to give specifics, give them. Because all that will happen is the conversations around the table are likely to center around what isn't clear, what might or might not happen, how could or could this, So I think when you're looking at preparing your budget, and Michelle, if you're still on, may have a view on this, but from what I can see, when you're looking at your budget, it really will clearly tell you how the grant is going to be spent, and that's what will be matched in your narrative. So if it's too vague and those details aren't included, it will raise more questions than give answers. And I think that you won't be putting your best foot forward. It's not to say that you wouldn't be able to submit a grant application. It's just the strongest applications we've seen tend to have as much detail as possible. And as I said with contingencies, if there's unknowns or things that you're waiting for, or plans that are in progress, tell our members. Say, this is in progress. This is something that we're trying to work towards. This is something we've got a task force, figuring out. So just really help them with that planning, even if you haven't got it all down and it's not all clear. That would be one of your next steps, and that's what you'll be figuring out. And hopefully some of that clarity will come during the grant process. Yeah, Michelle, did you want to sort of
No,
speak?
you got it all. You're good. But always, if there are any questions too, that grants email address that's all over the presentation can definitely be used.
Yep. Yeah. So I think we've just about managed to weave in the other questions that we got in advance of the webinar into the presentation itself. But as Michelle said, if there are any other questions that we haven't covered, or anything that you think of tomorrow or in the coming weeks, then by all means write to us at grants@impact100jerseycoast.org. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll help you in whatever way we are able. So Jenny, unless you had any other questions, I think that was the only one that came in while we were on the webinar.
Yep, no more questions.
All right, well, I think that wraps it up, and we are ahead of time, so always good. We can leave you to get on with your evening, and again, thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Ro and Jenny and everybody.
You're very
Well,
welcome.
and stay safe.
Thank you. Yes, stay safe and well, everybody.
All right, good night.